that Hanuman once goes to Ramachandra and asks, how shall I get liberation? How do I get liberation, salvation, freedom, liberation, moksha? And Ramachandra tells Hanuman, study the Mandukya Upanishad. Study the Mandukya. And if you do not, and he says, the words used are, Mandukyam ekameva alam mumukshunam vimuktaye. The Mandukya Upanishad by itself is sufficient to give liberation to those who seek liberation. If that is not enough, then Ramachandra proceeds to give a list of 108 Upanishads to Hanuman. So it's better for us. We don't have time. We're living in the 21st century here in Manhattan. We are pressed for time. So it's really well designed for us. Very short. Give me the truth, the distilled truth in a sense, and that you get in the Mandukya Upanishad. So if you want to be enlightened quickly, concentrate on the Mandukya. If you don't succeed, then there is this whole Vedanta 101 waiting for you. 108 Upanishads. What does the Mandukya Upanishad teach? You see, recently we've been studying it. So that's why I decided to give a few talks. My idea is to give 3 talks on the Mandukya Karika. So this is the first of the 3. We're going to talk about it this morning, and then next week, and then one more next month. There might be a 4th one the month after that in June. So 2 lectures now in April and 1 more in May. And then maybe possibly a 4th one in June. But today we'll talk about the essential teaching of the Mandukya Upanishad. This is what we're going to talk about. What does it teach? It teaches exactly what all the Upanishads teach. And what do the Upanishads teach? What does Vedanta teach? And luckily it can be put, although the literature is vast, but it can be put in one sentence. The Upanishads teach us that you are one with God. You are the ultimate reality. It is expressed in what are called the great sentences, Mahavakya. In different Upanishads you find these sentences. They sum up the teaching of the entire Upanishad. What are these Mahavakyas? Most famously, that thou art. Tat Tvamasi, which you find in the Chandogya Upanishad, one of the Upanishads, much bigger Upanishad than the Mandukya. Then you find another great saying, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. That you find in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Another saying, Prajnanam Brahma, this very consciousness that you have right now, this awareness, this itself is the absolute reality. And Ayam Atma Brahma, this very self, this self itself, this is the absolute reality. You can see all of these 4 sentences. This last one is found in the Mandukya Upanishad itself. The Mandukya Upanishad contains one of the great sentences, Mahavakyas. So these 4 sentences, these Mahavakyas, great sentences, their message is the same. All of them say exactly the same thing, that you are the ultimate reality. You see, the basic teaching of the Upanishads is that there is an ultimate reality. This world that we experience and how we experience ourselves, these are all manifestations of that reality. And what are you or I? What are we, sentient beings? We are that reality. If only we would know ourselves truly, we would realize ourselves to be that absolute reality. That absolute reality in the Upanishads, in Vedanta, is called Brahman. Not Brahmin, which is a caste, but Brahman. Brahman literally means the vast. That is the closest word you've got in Vedanta to God. So Brahman is the vast. And the incredible teaching of the Upanishads, of Vedanta, is that you are Brahman. And if you realize yourself as Brahman, evidently we do not know our own Brahman nature. But if we realize ourselves as Brahman, then the promise is that you would overcome all sorrow, all suffering. The promise is that you would attain true, profound, lasting bliss. In Sanskrit, Atyantika Dukkha Nivritti, complete eradication or transcendence or cessation of suffering. Paramananda Prapti, attainment of bliss. In a very general sense, this is the promise of all religion. whatever religion, whether it's Hinduism or Buddhism or Christianity, that you go beyond suffering. You attain to a state beyond suffering. You attain to a state of peace and bliss. In most religions, most approaches, it is given in mythical language, in terms of stories, in a kind of figurative, symbolic way. Talk of heaven and God and all of that. In the Upanishads, in Vedanta, it's given in a very direct philosophical way based on experience and reason, something that appeals to the modern person directly. We as if the truth is presented before us straight away. And nowhere more so than in the Mandukya Upanishad. So the essence of the teaching is that you are the ultimate reality. And if you would know yourself as that, then all your problems would be solved. You'll be able to overcome all the sufferings of life. So the prize is great. The promise is great. And therefore it's worthwhile to take a look at this teaching. There is no greater adventure in human life, no greater challenge in human life, no greater purpose or goal in human life than to know this and to realize it in our life, to make it a reality. Swami Vivekananda put it most simply. The goal of life is to manifest the divinity already within us. Basically, the teachings of the Upanishads. Look at the language. Manifest the divinity already within us. Not just know it, but manifest it. Make it a living reality. That's what the Mandukya aims at. And it's powerful because it's small. Because it's small, all the teaching is compacted. There is no space for anything else. There are no stories. In other Upanishads, there'll be cute little stories. The story of the little boy who went to the house of death, Yama and Nachiketa, or the arrogant young student, Shvetaketu, who learns a lesson in the highest philosophy from his father in the Chandogya Upanishad, where he hears that thou art. And so many stories are there in the Upanishads. And they are nice. They form a nice background place to start with. There are dialogues between teacher and student. None of that here. Straight away the teaching is given. And luckily, Gaudapada later on expands on that teaching in 4 chapters, which we shall see. But before entering into the